Forward looking, laying it off. Gaston! Hat trick! Ariel sends it in off of Gressel. Made it to Elliott. Oh, the Julian Carranza! A spectacular finish! Philadelphia doubles its lead.
Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and the Philadelphia Union, the day after New Year's, announced a big move, the move we've all been anticipating. That is the fourth head coach in Philadelphia Union history, announcing Bradley Carnell, the former St. Louis City manager and New York Red Bulls interim manager. And like we've done now 6-7 weeks in a row, episodes in a row, we always bring on a good friend of the show, Jose Nunez, even though this might be the last time Jose's ever on the show because we got a star in the house. I mean, Mr. Sirius XM himself, and say goodbye to the little guys like myself, but nonetheless, Jose, welcome back.
You're such a dork. I'm never gonna forget about anybody. No, what a day, right? In terms of everything that happened, I think I woke up this morning fully expecting that nothing of substance was gonna happen between. Did I lose Todd? You there? I think you're there. Yeah, you're there. Just making sure. I didn't expect for news to break so quickly and fast today, and sort of stuff that I've been holding back on just out of timing and working with sources. It's an unbelievable whirlwind of a day, and to be invited onto Sirius XM today was a complete vote of confidence in the work that I do, and frankly the support that we get as independent creators. It only happens because of all of you listening. So a huge thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we kid aside, but yeah, it's a huge honor to see you go on Sirius XM, and I'm super excited that they reached out to you and just get your thoughts on, Bradley Carnell and just the state of the club. And we've been saying that, right, the last couple of weeks, whether it be on this show or AAT Sports, that this was going to be a busy offseason. I don't know if people believed us or not. Maybe they did. I mean, I think, outside looking in, you would say, yeah, this is a big task for Ernst Tanner and the rest of that front office to get this one right. Yes, it starts with getting a manager, but it also, and you go ahead and look, you got to replace some players. You got to go ahead and, do you bring back Jack Elliott? Do you bring back Alejandro Bedoya? Do you bring back Leon Flock? And the answer to a lot of those questions was no. Jack Elliott signs with Chicago Fire. Leon Flock, I saw a report today that he's linked with Derby County over in England, and we'll see if that materializes for him or not. But Alejandro Bedoya, we talked about it last episode, he's back. Ian Glavinovich signed on loan with the club. We'll give another update on him in a little bit, but the big news is Bradley Carnell announced as a new manager. And I guess before we get into that, Jose, it was the Christmas break. It was New Year's. You have a good Christmas, good New Year's?
I sure did. And I'm sorry if my microphone's picking up all types of noise. Right now I'm on holiday out in South Carolina / Atlanta. So I got family running around with my wife and whatnot, but it was great. It was really, really good, and just eager to get back in the saddle. And obviously, as we mentioned last week, it's not going to slow down. And frankly, I don't think it's going to anytime soon. I think from here on out, it's just sort of a crescendo into the season because they go to Spain very, very soon. So yeah, it was a great holiday. How about yourself?
Yeah, it was good. Well, for the most part, right? I mean, being sick for a whole week. I mean, it went through my mom, sister, dad, and then myself finally. And it's like, man, day two and three, it just felt like I was dying. It's like, please just take me out of my misery. And you and I were talking. We were like, we knew the announcement was coming, and you kept telling me, yeah, it's going to come after the holiday break. And I'm like, yeah, I probably should get something pre-written for Bradley Carnell. And long and behold, I did not. And I'll probably get a little article written up tomorrow, but I should have taken Jose's advice that, look, once the holiday season's done, we'll go ahead and get something written. I did not, but we're doing a podcast. You guys listen to the podcast more than you guys read any of the stuff that I do. But regardless, like Jose said, it's because of you guys that we do this. We cover this team, a lot of independent journalists covering this team. And yeah, I know a snarky comment on social media that there wasn't a ton of media in the room, but let's face it, most of the people covering this team are independent reporters. And I think the club realizes that. And I don't think, or I hope the club doesn't take that for granted. And I've said it so many times on the show, and you, Jose, talking with people around the league. I mean, the Union have something special with all the independent reporters. I go out to Colorado, we go up to New York Red Bulls, and there's just not a lot of local guys covering. And I think a lot of those teams would kill for what the Philadelphia Union have. But regardless, let's go ahead and talk about the news. Bradley Carnell announced as the former manager, or announced as the new manager of Philadelphia Union, the former St. Louis manager, New York Red Bulls interim manager, and a lot of mixed emotions about this hire on social media, and a lot of good quotes, I think, from both Bradley and Ernst today. And yeah, a lot of comments. Ernst, doubled down on what he said with him and Jay Sugarman once they fired Jim Curtin. Then when Ernst Tanner had his end of the season press conference, and that word was development. We're going to develop, and that was a huge philosophy. And Ernst Tanner talks about, yeah, that was the biggest thing that we wanted. We wanted somebody that's good with the young players. We want somebody that can communicate with them, and that's exactly what Ernst Tanner said to pretty much start the press conference this Thursday afternoon.
That's exactly what we have been looking out for. We needed a strong communicator with young people, show the right abilities to work with them, and also, of course, have the awareness for player development of young players in particular, and that's what Bradley did already. And I think that we have a fantastic group of young players. I think, and I said it multiple times, probably the best in the country. And it takes some time, we all know that, and we all know that we cannot only play with young players, but we need to do our best for their development. And that was one of the most important criteria.
Yeah, so you're right there, development and young players. And we'll hear a quote later on talking about Union 2, the successful season that Union 2 had. But you look at the David Vasquez, the CJ Olney, neither one of these guys really featured all that much last season. Andrew Rick, I know, was the most of the young players to get a homegrown contract that featured the most. And that was down to Andre Blake getting injured and then Oliver Zemela just being shaky in the net. But yeah, I mean, if you're a young player, you got to be excited that you got a manager coming in that gave Tyler Adams, a young Tyler Adams, a chance in New York Red Bulls. Caden Clark got his debut under Bradley Carnell.
Yeah, you have to get excited. And just doing some quick research leading into a phone call earlier today, in 62 matches that Bradley Carnell was in charge at St. Louis, in those 62 matches, he featured 36 different players. Whether they were young guys or older guys, I'm not sure, but nonetheless, it shows that he's open to trying new things and trying different players. And what we do know about Philadelphia is that their players are young players and mainly homegrown players. That's just the reality of what is there in that system, in that roster, in that pipeline. So I think if you are a CJ Olney, you are a Neil Pierre, even today, again, a Frankie Westfield, you're probably really excited because everybody's starting from the level ground, right? In terms of who's going to play, who's not going to play. Sure, are there players who are more experienced and higher up the pecking order? Absolutely. And have they cemented themselves as starter? Yes. And I would say someone like Kai Wagner, you're not going to dethrone him unless something serious happens. But if you look across the midfield, even the center backs and the right side, maybe even the right side, considering Nate has been good, but obviously he maybe need another positions as the year goes on. It'll be really interesting to see who gets the nod from Bradley. And Bradley was very open to Todd about wanting competition within the squad, which is maybe something something that maybe felt a little lost. If you weren't one of Jim's guys, maybe you weren't it. I have no inside information on that. That's just sort of, me speculating and looking in. But this is interesting. And maybe it's, again, me being a half full type of person, but the change will be interesting. Whether it's good or bad is yet to be seen, but at least something is changing. And I think even Ernst today sort of cited the results weren't there. That's why we had to make a change. So a fascinating press conference that I think we can dissect in 17, 18 different ways, honestly.
Yeah, again, I mean, it goes back to the development comments, and Bradley made a comment saying that, look, you can still develop as an old player. He said, look, everybody in this room, we're still learning, we're still growing. It's like we're not know-it-alls. We don't know everything there is to know about the game of soccer. We're still growing as individual people, trying to become the very best we can at our job. And I do get a sense of, okay, this is, going to be all hands on deck. And like you said, whether you're a Oluwatu Makanya, who is yet to future for this team, whether you're a Jeremy Raffanello, where you saw limited minutes, Jesus Bueno, who saw limited minutes last season, everything's on the table. And when these players come into preseason in Florida, in Spain, these guys are going to give it their all. Nobody's locked in, I would imagine, other than a Kai Wagner, an Andre Blake, 1 or 2 year strikers, and Mikel Urtai Baribo. Daniel Gazak's probably locked in, but I think everything else, for the most part, is up for grabs. It's like, if you impress enough in preseason, Bradley Carnell is going to give you a chance. You gave the number. You said 62, 63 players were given a chance to play with St. Louis?
36 in 62 matches.
In 62. I knew there was a 60 something in there. Yeah, and that's a lot of players to be given a chance. And you read some of the fans in St. Louis, they said that's what did Bradley Carnell in, is that, a lot of chances tinkering with the lineup. There was not that solid lineup choice where we could predict every single game pretty much what Jim Curtin was going to go with. It's like, yeah, nothing surprises us at this point. And maybe that was part of the reason of Bradley's downfall down in St. Louis. But again, if you're a player on this roster who's not really been given much chance over the last couple of years, you come into this preseason with a lot of hope, a lot of expectations that, hey, look, if I do well enough, I'm going to be given a chance. And we'll see what players step up. We'll see what players, falter to that. But, regardless, if you're a player that wants to make your mark, Bradley Carnell is definitely going to give you that chance. One other thing that I want to play from Ernst Tanner, and then we'll go into Bradley Carnell's philosophy, if that's okay with you. Ernst Tanner starts talking about, when things were going good for the club, nobody's complaining. And I think that was a little bit of a shot fired at the players. A lot of players were vocal talking to you after games. Jose saying, hey, look, we need this, we need that. The young players aren't ready. We've heard, a little bit of frustration from Jim Curtin in the past with ownership not spending. And yeah, Ernst Tanner kind of takes a shot fired at the players and the old regime. When things weren't going good, everybody starts complaining.
I talked to Ale but about different things. But to be honest, the coach's selection is in the discretion of ownership and the sporting director. And we will do the right things. That's clear to me. And it's not about the development of only young people and about only playing with young people. Everybody in our system needs to earn his spot. That's how it is. But at the same time, if you want to be a winning team, you need to develop something before you can win. And as long as we have been cohesive and successful, nobody was complaining about anything. And once we started to play more for as an individual, and we lost cohesion, then we all of a sudden were not winning again, and that shows us exactly where we need to get back to.
Yeah, that was shots fired. I mean, I think that was something that caught me a little bit by surprise, that Ernst Tanner was taking nobody. Everybody was getting thrown under the bus with Ernst Tanner there. There was nobody safe. And it got me thinking. It's like, did I see individual play personally? And yeah, I mean, at times, you would see maybe a couple times where guys would dribble when they would pass, but even even Jim Curtin would call that out, say, look, there was times where we should have passed and we dribbled too many times. We should have taken a shot and we took an extra pass. And, I think that was just players, things not going the way, especially towards the end of the season where they needed to get 3 points. And with all the injuries that mounted up, all the 1-goal losses, sometimes players try to take games in their own hand. And that isn't what we saw in years prior with this club where, they would, press, win the ball back. And now you go in transition and, score a scrappy goal. But when things became dire last year, yeah, you did, I think, see a little bit of individual play that we weren't used to seeing with this team. But yeah, I was a little bit surprised that Ernst Tanner threw, so many players or the players under the bus there with that comment.
To me, it sort of sounded like a signal across the bow of this is my franchise, right? This is my project now, and I'm going to shape it. I'm not going to come in and have a head coach already in place and have all these other staff members. This is, I think, a way for Ernst to signal this is going to be different. And if you want in, great. If you don't, we can figure out a way to have you exit. And I think that's as much as it may hurt to hear, et cetera, but I think it's also, sort of needed, right? To have somebody who's blunt enough to be able to say just that, right? If you don't want in, that's fine, but I need people who want to buy it into what I'm building and what I'm building with Bradley and what I'm building with, gosh, even the Chris Zitterbarts of the world, right? Because he came in after, after Ernst, while Ernst has been here in direct power, and the John Shears of the world, who sort of blend the two worlds, the pre and the post, Ernst Tanner. So it's really interesting to sort of hear him say this. And I guess the only player safe is Jeremy Raffanello, because I think he's the one who declined to comment that one time. He's like, I'm just gonna take the homegrown card and not comment on anything about needs, etc., spending, whatever. So I do appreciate it, but also see how this could have ruffled some feathers. And God, to be a fly on the wall in the conversation between Ernst Tanner and Alejandro Bedoya about coaching selection, and exactly what Ernst just said, which I'm assuming is probably very close to what he said to Alejandro, where coaching decisions are actually down to ownership and the sporting director, would have been just a fascinating conversation here.
Yeah, and I would add, I agree with Ernst Tanner right there. I don't think it should be up to the players, right, to say, okay, this is the manager we want. If we don't get our way, then we're going to throw a temper tantrum. No, it should be to the sporting director, the ownership. I mean, that's what you hire a sporting director to do, to make the sporting decisions. And yeah, maybe fans would like to have the players have some kind of input and whatnot, but at the end of the day, it's the sporting director that's going to put the pieces together, and it's up to the players and the coaching staff to execute that plan. And when that doesn't happen, you wind up, somebody loses their job, and it just so happened to be Jim Curtin this season. And now the pressure is all on Ernst Tanner. If this doesn't work this season, I think Jay Sugarman, I'm assuming Jay Sugarman can say, you know what, we'll give Bradley Carnell a year to, take a look at these pieces, and we want to make the playoffs this year. If we don't, and I'm just speaking out loud and not saying this is what people said, but yeah, right. But if the Union don't win MLS Cup, I don't think Ernst Tanner or Bradley Carnell is getting fired. But the club has to make it back to the playoffs, right? I think that's number one. And then in year two, if you take a step backwards, then people's jobs might be on the line. Or I could see a possibility where if the Union miss playoffs again, could Ernst Tanner's job be on the line? Could Bradley Carnell be on the line? I mean, it's possible. I mean, I'd be shocked if the Union, honestly. I mean, this roster is just way too talented as things stand right now. And I'd imagine that there's going to be more signings. Ernst Tanner did say there'd be more signings, and we'll talk about that a little bit later here on the show. But you and I and other people in the media, when we looked at the starting 11 last year, that's a good team. And yes, running it back, we all said they probably shouldn't have ran it back. And we said that they needed to bring in more pieces into this roster. But on paper, this is a team that is better than a DC United team. This is a team on paper that was better than an Atlanta United team. And it just so happened that this team fell way below expectations last season with the injuries. And then when it was just way too late for this team to try and get a result, try to get into the playoffs, they just fell short. And it was disappointing to see. And again, when things happen that way, somebody's going to take the fall, and it so happened to be Ernst Tanner. A lot of comments coming in here, guys. Sorry, I know Jose and I talked before that we want to try to leave this to 45 minutes, so I'm not pulling up every single comment. I see the comments coming in. I appreciate you guys commenting. Vince says Ernst's job should be on the line from this point on before anyone else in the entire team structure. And I think Ernst's job probably is on the line. Jim Curtin was 10 years with the club. That's a long time. And the last 6 years, besides last season, we kept seeing this team go higher and higher and higher and higher. And it seemed like, at least from the outside looking in, that Jay and Jim had a respect for each other. Jim Curtin would always talk about the 3 pillars of success, always be repeated by Jay Sugarman. It seemed like those two were aligned on that. And, Jay said, all right, Ernst, you make the call. You fire this manager, you bring in your guy. And yeah, I mean, I guess I could see if the Union don't miss the playoffs that, yeah, I mean, Ernst Tanner's seat gets extremely hot. I think it is hot right now, but I mean, look, I don't expect anybody to say, look, if you don't win MLS Cup this year, you're getting fired. I think that would be asinine. I don't think that's the conversation behind the scenes.
Yeah, I wonder. I think taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture, Ernst Tanner's fingerprints are all over this club now, right? You have to look no further than the big building that's coming up right across the practice fields, and even the practice fields that are there, right? That's all sort of the fingerprint of Ernst Tanner. Though I do wonder, and maybe agree with you, and I have no insight whatsoever, but like I wonder if this hiring decision does come down to, okay, Ernst, it's if we regress again, this is on you now, right? The buck is stopping with you. This is not a coach decision that we are sort of putting you into. This is one that you're uh, uh that we're not going to take light. It's just, it seems like this is maybe the leash is as far as this, right? And obviously he's gotten some signings done already and working some other stuff, but it's does feel like it's now needs to show up and show out the results, not regress.
Yep, absolutely. Let's go ahead and play next clip, which is Bradley Carnell talking twice about his philosophy. First, we start with, he had a weird line there, which I feel like we're going to hear a lot of for this upcoming season, where he said 60-30-10 method.
I believe in the 60-30-10, right? So 60% for me of all our transition goals or moments come from transition, right? So the 30% set pieces, 10% from possession. So, I'm not a 75% possession guy. And I believe being in, front foot, proactive, in your face, aggressive, and very counter-attacking. So, yeah, I'm not here to judge anything what happened last year. This is not my space and not my place. Like I said, the foundations are strong, and that's a good platform to work with. And now it's just about sharpening and filing and coming in there with a lot of the work done, and who I am and how I'm built and what I believe in and how development should look like. I feel this is a perfect fit, and we've spoken about it. We've been in touch for many years, even in Germany, and I think there are very, very common synergies there, and we synchronized in those ideas. And now my plan is to get the players synchronized on the field.
Yeah, and before that too, Ernst Tanner was talking about Bradley Carnell's Bundesliga playing days. I'm like, yeah, this sounds like Ernst is a little bit crushing on Bradley's playing days here, just talking about, playing for big clubs, just a little bit, right? Just a little bit. And he said, I hope that, his good traits he had as a player, he can do it just as well as a manager. And so it's like, okay, Ernst, you're putting a little bit of pressure on Bradley right there. Like, you're a good player. Now let's be a better manager. But yeah, I thought it was interesting there where Bradley said 60% of our goals have to come from transition. And this goes back to the 2019, 2020 Philadelphia Union, where it was, we're going to wear you down with our pressing, nonstop pressing. And Brendan Aronson, Jameer Montero, two players that were huge parts of that. And I do believe the Union actually had one player on this roster that's going to be key for that type of football, in Danley John Jock. I think Leon Flock could have been a player that would have thrived in just quick transition, where the Union the last couple of years went to a little bit more possession. And I know last year was kind of dictated because the Union were down so much. And so teams were going to force them to have the ball. And the other part of that is Jack McGlynn. Jim Curtin tried so hard to make him the playmaker of the squad. I mean, it was between him and Kai Wagner every single game with the most touches. And, you looking at it, it makes sense. You get your best players on the ball that have the best passing attributes. And I think Jack McGlynn had a great season last year with Union, scored a couple goals, a lot of line splitting passes. But I look at him, how does he fit into a nonstop from first minute to the last minute pressing? Can he fit into this? And yeah, I do wonder what the future holds for Jack McGlynn. I think he's a talented player, and I think, he'll put in the work in the offseason. And he's done that ever since he became a pro player. I'm not questioning his work rate and trying to get better, but we all know that Jack McGlynn's best skill set is his passing. And when you want nonstop pressing from the top of the box back to your own box, I think he's going to struggle with that a little bit.
Yeah, this 60-30-10 comment from Bradley had my head sort of like, all right, well, we're being that open about what the team's going to do. So, okay, the book's out already and really isn't all that different from what had been done prior. And I also share the same sentiment as you, Todd, right? This hire, and I see Vince sort of leading to it, would have benefited Leon Flock immensely. Leon would have been potentially a through and through starter, considering how much ground he covers, how hard he plays smash mouth football, and how quickly he presses. And if there was a way to play, imagine a way to play Danley and Flock at the same time in this type of style of football, and how much ground they would cover, how quickly they would seize the ball and hopefully release it to forwards like Tiber Rebo and other folks. It would have been incredible to see, but obviously that isn't the case as he's potentially making a move. I do wonder what the rest of the pickups look like and the exits, right? And you mentioned it again, Jack McGlynn, does he make sense for this type of style? I like to think that any coach would see Jack McGlynn and figure out a way to pluck him in and make him work, even if it's difficult for the overall plan. He's just that talented in that left foot and really, really bright as well in terms of what he can see that others can't ahead of time. So I hope that Jack stays, but I could also see a world where, he sees or reads or is informed of this move, and in terms of Bradley Carnell coming in and sees this press conference and maybe thinks, maybe I need to reconsider, maybe I need to talk to my agent, that type of thing. Who knows what's going on through that family's head? And I wish him well, and I hope it's with the Philadelphia Union, because again, to what we experienced this summer as press and what fans experienced this summer in terms of being able to cheer and support two Union players, never mind the other ones. Paxton as well, who had Union connections there in the Olympics. It's an unbelievable feat that the Philadelphia Union were able to put together. So we'll see what happens with Jack and wish him the best. Spain's coming up very, very quickly.
Yeah, it is, and I think every player, like I said at the beginning, is going to get a chance to impress. And as you were talking about Jack McGlynn there, I'm thinking, okay, what about playing as a 10? But I don't know. I mean, you look at how those Red Bull teams played, how this Philadelphia Union played in 2019, 2020. Brendan Aronson, Jamiro Montero, those guys are pressing so hard at the 10 position. I think Daniel Gazdag is going to be one of those players leading the charge with the press from that 10. And again, you're going to ask so much out of Daniel Gazdag. He gives a lot of goals and everything. And I'm a person who criticizes him a lot for not being a Lucho Acosta, not playmaking enough, getting those assists like I would want a 10. But he does score the goals. And I think you're going to go away from that a little bit. Let's not get as many goals like you got in the past with in that 10 position. Let's go ahead and start the press from that 10. Kevin Kincaid, I'm assuming, chimes in here. Philadelphia Red Bulls. He's right. He's spot on there. And he had a fantastic article later, and he says, wrong account. Yeah, we know it's you, Kevin. But yeah, I mean, Kevin Kincaid's not wrong. This is the Philadelphia Union Red Bulls, and it was mentioned so many times, the traits of those past there we go. Thank you, Kevin. Those past New York Red Bull teams.
Right, and it's going to be just that, right? And talking with Eric Winalda in between segments, it was kind of like, this is going to feel very New York-y in terms of how hard it's going to press and how hard it's all going to develop, and it's all going to develop sort of the way that they got away from, right? And mainly once Julian Carranza left, that pressure from the very, very top was almost non-existent. So can they bring that back? I don't know. And is that going to be exciting to watch? Only if they really do something with the ball afterwards, right? Because they can go and gain possession, but if they're only earning shitty corners crappy corners and whatnot, it's not going to be that exciting. But if they're able to do what they did in 2022 in terms of gaining possession high up the field and doing something with it, then yeah, of course it'll be exciting and no one will think twice about it. But if the results and the poor defending continues as it was last year, despite getting the ball up top, it's going to be very, very tough. I'm really intrigued on how Bradley Carnell, who I'm guessing has very little say. Again, I have no insight onto the signings, considering how late he's coming into the process and into the window. It'll be fascinating to see.
All right, last thing we'll play is Bradley again talking about more of his philosophy.
Yeah, people is the core of my philosophy, right? Working with people, developing players, this is the core of my philosophy. And, I feel it's my duty here. It's what I do. I'm not here to coach for me. I'm not here to, for sure, I enjoy the success that comes with it. But, for me, when I see players succeeding, this is the most exciting thing to happen. When I see a player get promoted through the ranks, as I was once, right? So I was a 16-year-old too, playing in the pro ranks in South Africa, and somebody gave a chance, somebody gave a shot at me. So, I'm all for that, and I'm excited about Kevin's development, as well as developing some other youngsters here in camp. So yeah, I'm excited about that whole process. And like I said, people are the core of my philosophy.
So it is good to hear, because we all know that Jim Curtin's best attribute was being a player's coach, and every single player loved playing for Jim Curtin, and he always had the backs of his players. And so to hear Bradley Carnell come out and say, "Hey, look, people, I care about people and developing players." And again, we talked about it earlier in the show, Jose, where if you're a young player on this roster, or if you're a player who hasn't got much of a chance the last couple seasons, here's Bradley Carnell doubling down on that, saying, "Hey, look, I'm going to give you a chance." And it's not just Kevin Sullivan. It's the Davi Vasquez's, the CJ Olney's, the we'll talk about that later. I was about to name drop another player, but sorry, Jose. I know you're dying. I know you're dying. But again, I mean, just everybody on this roster is going to have a chance come preseason. And again, I don't want to repeat myself, and we keep getting more and more people in here, and so maybe I should repeat myself. But yeah, if you're a young player, if you're a player in general who hasn't got much of a chance, well, it's positive words to hear from Bradley Carnell.
Yeah, if you're the player or the agent of a player who's super young on this roster, and you've been worried about opportunities, or whether or not an extension makes sense, etc., this is probably a good first impression, right? In terms of I want to develop players, and are they just talking words, maybe, or pieces of commentary on that make you look good, etc.? Sure, whatever. But if he is true to his word in terms of 36 different players in 62 matches, which is sort of unreal for a manager. I have it listed here. Curtin had 127 in his 10 years, by the way, according to Transfer Market. So it's obviously a very impressive rate, considering he was there for a season and a half, maybe, right? It was he was there for as they were preparing. But yeah, it'll be intriguing to see how they approach the players that are coming in, have been there, and I know for a fact that the league has probably had some concern in terms of how this new manager is going to approach Kevin Sullivan, because he is an absolute cheat code when it comes to engagement on social media and all the rest. So I wish him well. I don't know what the right steps are. I don't think any of us do. But what we do know is that it's a ticking clock with Kevin Sullivan in terms of his eventual transfer to Manchester City, which he was at for the Manchester Derby, witnessing in person with his brother Quinn. So U.S. Soccer, I wonder what they're doing with the Sullivans. I wonder what the promises are in terms of that too. So a lot of moving pieces, and Bradley's going to be at the cornerstone of it.
Yeah, and I don't know, with the season that Manchester City's having, maybe they say, yeah, let's go ahead and bring in Kevin Sullivan right now, and he'll be the savior of this squad. Not going to happen. But, some in U.S. soccer, some in this fan base, some people that cover this team would have you to believe so. But, yeah, that's definitely not going to happen whatsoever. Last thing I'll say about Bradley, and then we'll move on to the other topics as we're winding down the podcast. But Bradley Carnell, 22, 25, and 15 record in 62 games in St. Louis, 17, 12, and 3 in his first season in charge with St. Louis, where they won the Western Conference regular season, lost in the second round to Sporting Kansas City 4-1, then 2-1 in that best-of-3 series, their fierce rivals. Second season, 4-8-10 in his second season. Then it eventually led to his firing. And I see a lot of fans bring this up on social media, saying, hey, he wasn't good enough at St. Louis. But my argument would be he's inherited a team that's better on paper than it was in St. Louis. And so because of that, I think he'll be just fine, where this is a brand new team. And yeah, if you look at the underlying numbers, even the underlying numbers said that St. Louis team wasn't all that good in their first season, but they kept outperforming expectations. I mean, how many goals were they gifted the first couple of games? It's like, oh my God, like, what are these teams doing? They're just like, oh, here's a free goal for you, St. Louis. You're the darlings of the team. You have a beautiful stadium, and MLS wants to see you succeed. We're going to give you a goal. We're going to score on ourselves. And yeah, I mean, St. Louis caught lightning in the bottle right there. And the second half of the second here in his tenure with St. Louis did not go according to plan. And I know injuries played a big factor into that, but a lot of fans are pretty optimistic. A lot of fans, look at that record and say, yeah, this is a manager that doesn't have a high win percentage. But I would argue that he has a better team right now as things stand with Union than he did at any time with St. Louis.
I would wholeheartedly agree. I think he has a way better roster to work with than he did in St. Louis, and it really comes down to the freedom that he may or may not have, and how he takes advantage of a potentially even lighter schedule, depending on actually absolutely a lighter schedule than last year, because there's no CONCACAF Champions Cup for them. Sounds like no Leagues Cup. So is it just the League and US Open Cup? I think he can work wonders with just two competitions in a first year versus being thrown into into a ton of competitions all at once. Imagine a world, Todd, and I know we're trying to move on, but imagine a world where Bradley Carnell comes into this job and having to prepare for a Club World Cup over the summer.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how unreal of a task that would be, especially with the roster as is, and the clubs that they would potentially play against? It would have been such a shock to the system. And just quick aside, congratulations to Fafa Picault making his way to Miami and probably earning himself a pretty nice appearance bonus as part of that roster for the Club World Cup. Probably a nice chunk of change.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that comment, Valerie. You know, we're trying to be optimistic, and I think that's all fans can be is as optimistic. And yeah, I mean, I guess it wouldn't be the Philadelphia way without people being negative. And I understand, but at the same time, this guy hasn't played a single or coached a single game with the Philadelphia Union. So why are we already, riding him out of town without seeing this team? And the biggest thing that Bradley Carnell can do is win. And if he starts winning, then the fans are going to get behind him 100%. And we're not going to be seeing all these negative comments that we see on social media. But I'm going to shut up for the rest of the show, make this the Jose Nunez show, because everything else that we talk about is stuff that Jose's broke the last couple of days. It's been a whirlwind of the last couple of days, last couple of weeks for you, right? Chasing so much information and just seeing how you process things and how you work. And it's like, oh my God, your story is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's like, oh, by the way, this is happening. This is happening. It's like, Jesus, like, let this man sleep. But I guess the news never stops. And so that is the Union 2 coaching shakeup, which is Ryan Richter. Jose, you reported this, I feel like, a year ago, is becoming the Philadelphia Union 2 head coach. Ross Cain is keeping his role as goalkeeper coach with Union. Fred De Silva, former Philadelphia Union player back in the OG days, taking over as the assistant coach. And then Henry Apaloo is also coming in as an assistant coach. So, Jose, you broke the news. I'll let you go ahead and take it from here on out.
Yeah, it's I think it's, in talking to folks around the club and around MLS Next Pro, as well as former folks in the league that have collaborated or played or in some way, shape, or form touch base with these coaches. I'm sorry. A lot of excitement behind this group, especially this specific core being put together. Sure, it's not Marlon LeBlanc, which I think what a lot of fans want to know what's going on with him, and I think we do too as press. I have zero insight onto what's going on with Marlon. My phone's open. If anybody knows something and wants to share, or Marlon, if you're watching, let me know. More than happy to keep it anonymous. But this is a group that can really get a lot of players. And if you think about the success that they had last year, it'll be hard to replicate, but nonetheless, it's a group that can get the most out of this pipeline and the next level of exciting Union Academy talent that can turn into homegrown. So all in all, people remain optimistic. If you're the Bridge Brigade or someone who supports the Union 2 specifically and not the main team, or you do both and you keep a close eye to these youngsters and their coaches, this is a very exciting group with a really, really good resume.
Exactly. And I think, some people maybe would look at Ryan Richter going from the first team to the second team as a step down, but I would argue it's not, because Marlon LeBlanc can forever have on his resume, I coached Kevin Sullivan, I coached Andrew Rick, I coached David Vasquez, Frankie Westfield, and so on and so on. And now the next group of homegrown players that are going to come on through, Ryan Richter can go ahead and put those on his resume and say, hey, maybe it's Jameer Johnson, maybe it's a Jordan Griffin, maybe it's a so on. I can put that on my resume. And so I think this is a good move for Ryan Richter. I think it's a good move keeping Ross Cain here. Ross Cain, I mean, terrific work in his short time with the Philadelphia Union too. But you look at the clubs that he's been with in the past and the goalkeepers that he's worked with. I mean, that's a guy who has coached a lot of top talent and goalkeepers that are going to have long careers. And I look at a player like Gaga Salina, who just ended his loan with Barnsley, I believe it was, over in England. And Now he goes back to Chelsea. I'd imagine he goes back out on loan. There's no way he takes the Chelsea starting goalkeeping spot, but Gaga Salina, I can see maybe he sneaks onto this 2026 roster here. I mean, we're a year away from the World Cup. Maybe he impresses enough wherever he goes on loan next, and maybe he takes the starting goalkeeping spot from Matt Turner, from Zach Steffen. Who knows? I don't think goalkeeper's set for the U.S. team, and I'm not here to bring out all the national team sickos, and so we can stop talking about them now. But I think bringing back Ross, great move, and I look forward to seeing Andrew Rick growing even more. Sheridan, you reported, I feel like that got lost months ago. He's back for Union 2. And so, it's good to see that, there's some changes, but there's also some guys staying behind the scene. And so all in all, exciting times ahead for Union 2.
Yes, I would agree. And sure, I continue to see comments, Vince. I'm not ignoring you. It is interesting. I'm really intrigued on what happens on Marlon LeBlanc. I personally feel the club has been extremely secretive onto what his future is, and that's okay. But we will see. We'll see where Marlon lands, whether it's within the organization or elsewhere. You can't help but to be happy wherever he is. And you're right. This is a great experience opportunity for Ryan Richter. I don't think that this is a demotion whatsoever. He's head coaching a whole team rather than being an assistant focusing on X, Y, or Z. So we can move on to the next bit.
Yeah, and one thing I should have said about Bradley Carnell's coaching staff, Phil Wetton, Frank Leik, both coming back to the first team. Ernst Tanner confirmed. There is an analyst joining because Dean Castellas left the club, and then there's an assistant manager also coming in, but Ernst Tanner would not confirm who those people are. And then he also signed a 2-year deal. Bradley Carnell, I should have said that at the beginning. That is my apologies, but yeah, 2-year deal through 2026 for Bradley Carnell. And the next bit of news you broke, Jose, was Jamie Cleland joins the Philadelphia Union Academy as the new director of goalkeeping. And look, I even have Jose Nunez. You broke this story, Jose. You broke all these stories, and he comes over from Delaware, the Delaware University men's national team, and this is also an exciting move. I mean, I think past Andrew Rick, I mean, who does the club have? And they go out and get Cholo from San Jose, I believe it was, right? And he should be the next big thing, next big goalkeeping prospect. And so Jamie's going to have his hands all over that and having a big play into hopefully developing Cholo into a big player for the Philadelphia Union for years to come.
Yeah, Jamie has, I think, a really good task in terms of working with these young keepers. And sure, Cello is sort of the keystone of the talent, but also seeing what's after Marcelo, Cello, Avalos, who you're right, joined from San Jose, who I sense will probably be with the Union too in a matter of time, considering how well he, as I've seen footage and videos and here, he's done very, very well. So it'll be really, really fascinating to see how Jamie works with him, and as well as how he works with the rest of the group and the different keepers and coaches throughout the entire pyramid. But excited for Jamie, and it's another Delaware Blue Hen connection with also John Shearer, who sort of heads the entire operation that is the Academy / Union 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Ernst Tanner talked about it. We heard it earlier saying that the Union have the best academy. And so you just continue to add to that academy staff and making it as the best way you can possible. But let's go ahead and move on. I know we're flying through here, but we said 45 minutes. Definitely going to go over here a little bit. Let's stay with Union 2 news. And that is Frankie Westfield. You reported this, Jose, moving from a Union 2 contract to a homegrown contract. And people in the comments were saying, talk about players coming in. What players are coming in? Well, Frankie Westfield, here he is. Big player for Union 2 last season, played as a left back, as a natural right back, but this guy can play all over the back line. We started seeing him get call-ups to the U.S. youth national teams, and this guy has a bright future with the Philadelphia Union.
Yeah, unbelievable future. And I hate to say whether people are not no ball, but Eric Manalda knew a lot about Frankie Westfield and started, dishing out, yeah, he was in Chile, wasn't he? It's like, this guy knows ball, right? And yeah, I think Frankie immediately becomes left back number 2, right? Kai Wagner is going to be hard to get him off the field. I think the only thing that gets him off the field is an injury or a 7-0 game. So it'll be really, really fun to see how he develops, and hopefully Bradley's able to get the most out of him. And the Union have an incredible talent that it's hard to believe was only mere weeks away from going to Penn State and having a collegiate season. So from that to a first team deal is an unbelievable rise to a professional contract like that.
Yeah, and Sexy Hoagie, I mean, talked about, wanting new players are going to follow, right? And yeah, I'd imagine. I mean, Ernst Tanner sent more players, and so Neil Pierre, it's only a matter of time before the club announce that. Maybe tomorrow they announce it. I don't know. Neil Pierre, Frankie Westfield, and I'd imagine there'd be a couple more players coming in to the Philadelphia Union. But regardless, Ernst Tanner talks about, having the best academy in the country, and you reward those players with homegrown contracts. And this won't be the end. We'll keep seeing more and more. And I know I saw the negative comment saying, "Oh, we're gonna have our whole starting 11 of homegrown players," and we don't want that. That's not going to lead to success. But look, it's a business at the end of the day, and yeah, you can look at all the hype that this player has coming through the academy, but that hype doesn't mean anything until they start playing game. That's how you start growing their value, and it's a business at the end of the day. And I know fans get pissed that the Union sell, the Aronson brothers, Kevin Sullivan eventually get sold, but all clubs in the world do that, right? And it's just a rinse and repeat. And yeah, it sucks that some of your favorite players won't stay around here forever, but at the end of the day, you got to get money for them and keep reinvesting that into the squad. And we'll see what the Union do in terms of what homegrown players are sold next. But one thing we know, Frankie Westfield, Union 2, it's a homegrown contract. No more?
I was going to say, reportedly, let's just be, sources tell me the club has not announced
nothing
anything.
official from the club, right? Yeah.
Nothing official from the club. I've reached out for comment and get an email back for anything that was posted today. No comment from the club, which I need to probably do a better job of actually putting the club decline a comment or the club never get back to me with comment. So, yeah, it's been a week, man. And as we close the show, I can't believe how fast this week has gone, and frankly, today specifically.
All right, so the last bit of news that we're talking about is reports coming out of Argentina that Ian Glavinovich's deal with the Union is a loan that the Union are paying a loan fee of $350,000 and then a buy option of $3 million, which would be a new record for the Philadelphia Union. Mikhail Ura holds that record at $2.8 million, now 2.6 because of inflation and all that. Yay. But $3 million, a lot of money for a center back. And supposedly going off a transfer market, it says that he's out of contract after the end of the season. And a lot of fans would say, well, why would the Union pay $3 million for a player that you could get on free after the end of the season? And my argument to that would be there's no guarantee that he resigns with the Philadelphia Union. So at least you have the option to pick him up instead of him going and choosing where he goes to next.
Yeah, and I think a good point of comparison, and thank you to you, Todd, for sharing that story. It snuck by me as I was in the Atlanta Aquarium. Is that this figure would surpass Mikhail Ula even if adjusted for inflation. So yeah, there's no say whether or not Ian would even be interested in signing with the Union as a free agent. If anything, this gives some leverage of, if he has a great first 6 months, they can go ahead and just capture his signature right there and work with him and having something that's, agreeable. Obviously, you don't want to hold the player against their will, but this is, to me, exciting. I think 9 years at Newell's Old Boys, both as an academy player and then eventually and gradually making your way up to the very, very top of the Argentine league is very impressive. And I will say it once again, if Vasco da Gama in Brazil was interested in you, you are probably pretty damn talented. So the Union luck out from a deal that went sideways at the very, very last minute.
And if it doesn't work out, well, you're not obligated to pick up that buy option. So it's a win-win for everybody involved. And we'll see how Ian plays on the field. And hopefully for the Union's sake, for the fans' sake, he kicks the ground running. I know I saw his Instagram today that he's back in Argentina. And he said with Sage Hurley that one of his favorite things to do is fishing. And yeah, he was fishing in his Instagram story, caught a fish. And it's like, damn. Like the Union a couple years ago did a story or a video with Cole Turner, shout out to the Churchville, Maryland native, of him fishing in the Susquehanna. And I was like, oh my God, they definitely should have invited me out there to go fishing with this guy. And I saw him a couple years ago with Jacob Glesnes, Kai Wagner, and I forget who else, maybe Joe Bendick. And they were all out on Cole's boat just fishing away. I'm like, damn, dude, like those guys look like such great people just to hang around with and fish with. And maybe the Union can do a bit with Ian and get him into the Delaware River and see what he can pull out of there. But comments coming in. So, Jose, did you see the whole the whale sharks at the Atlanta Aquarium? Fantastic aquarium. If you guys haven't been, love that aquarium.
Yeah, an unbelievable experience. That was so much fun, even if it was in the middle of the madness of the Peach Bowl that I got myself entangled with.
Absolutely. A lot of great comments, guys. Appreciating it. Ren Rocky 41. Thanks for the news and scoops. Keep up the great works, fella. Hey, appreciate that. I'm not the one with the scoops. That's Jose. But yeah, I do think we both do good works. We work well together. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. Ian, Valerie says looks good. See, yeah, he does look good as a player, hopefully, and as a person. People say so. Looks like a good fisherman from the catch you posted. But Jose, thank you as always for joining the show. Where can people find you on social media?
You all can find me at Jose R. Nunez 91 on Twitter. I also post on Reddit occasionally. I really need to get back and doing more on Substack. It's been just difficult to get the time during the holiday break, but I'll probably do a recap message or post on Substack for everything that was these last 24, 48 hours. And I think my phone went off a little bit ago. I think there's more coming in terms of stuff, not necessarily like immediately Union related, but there's certainly a lot of stuff percolating. So again, as I said at the top of the show, it's been an unbelievable 2024. Now that we're in 2025, it started off with a really cool experience of being on Sirius XM. Family members were sending me pictures of them in their cars listening and send me the screenshot of the little dashboard thing, which is really, really neat. So I would not be in this spot without Mike, Dave, the AT guys, you, Todd, helping me out in terms of working together, and everybody listening, and those, even more so those that choose to support my my stuff monetarily. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. And if you guys aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow @FreeKickPod. We have your podcast, The Free Kick, the YouTube channel, youtube.com/FreeKickPod. A lot of you guys watch these live on YouTube. I appreciate that. Now go over and watch my top 10 goals scored in the 2024 season. I think we're 14 people away from hitting 200 subs on YouTube. So help me get there, share the word, and comment, watch that video. Tell me, did I get my top 10 order right? What goals did I miss out on? A lot of fun putting that video together. And I know I waited last minute, and part of that was because I was sick. But look, you guys got that video out. So now go and watch it after you watch the live. But as always, thank you guys so much for joining Jose and I. It's been a blast just reading all your comments and doing the show. And Jose, continue killing it. Other people that cover this team that are commenting, you guys continue killing it. The fans keep being the fans. And here's to a better 2025 season for the Philadelphia Union. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.